Hello there, you're tuned into 7Edition. I'm Sabrina Zainal and these are your top stories. 16 suspected Daesh militants arrested in 6 states. Audit finds 7 financial irregularities with LTAT. And the Prime Minister says the world can do nothing to force Indonesia to act on forest fires. We begin the bulletin with this story. 15 men and a woman were arrested by the federal police in a crackdown across 6 states. They were nabbed on suspicion of planning attacks on certain politicians and groups. Federal Special Branch Counterterrorism Division said the suspected militants were 3 Malaysians, 12 Indonesians and an Indian national. The division's Principal Assistant Director, Dato' Ayub Khan, said they were detained between July 10th and yesterday in Sabah, Selangor, Sarawak, Penang, Pahang and Kuala Lumpur.
Mereka ini terlibat aktif dalam social media, merekrut warga negara Indonesia dan warga negara Malaysia, menyebarkan ideologi Salafi Jihadi ataupun Daesh dan merancang untuk melancarkan serangan di Malaysia dan Indonesia pada masa akan datang.
Most of the Indonesians are employed in the labor industry, where some have been here for 2 to 3 years before they were arrested. No weapons were found, while all the suspects' mobile phones were confiscated. All the suspects, except for the Indian national, were arrested for offences related to terrorism under the Security Offences Special Measures Act. The Indian woman was arrested under the Immigration Act and is in the process of being deported to her home country. Meanwhile, police have crippled a human trafficking syndicate masterminded by a Malaysian after nabbing 11 of its members. The syndicate was busted in a series of operations conducted by the Bukit Aman Special Branch between September 22nd and yesterday, which also saw the discovery of 66 Myanmar migrants. At a media conference in Kuala Lumpur today, Federal Police Special Branch Deputy Director 2, Dato' Cheong Kun Kok, said the 4-day special operation was conducted in the Klang Valley, Pahang, Kelantan and Penang.
Daripada maklumat yang siasatan kita, dan kita percaya mereka ini juga memiliki senjata api yang berbahaya dan juga terlibat dalam aktiviti penjualan dadah sedikit ini.
The suspects who were arrested, 6 locals and 5 from Myanmar, had acted as agents and transporters. Initial investigations revealed the group actively smuggled in migrants via Sungai Golok since April. The syndicate's international network was also detected across Myanmar, Thailand and Malaysia. All the suspects were detained under the Security Offences Special Measures Act, while the migrants were held under the Immigration Act.
Sesi-sesi sidang media harian ini akan berjalan dan akan memenuhi tombong berita nak jawab. Ya?
Now, police have warned the public against issuing statements on the shooting of 3 robbery suspects in Batu Arang recently. Bukit Aman CID Principal Assistant Director of the Legal and Prosecution Division SAC, Mior Farid Al-Atrash Wahid, said investigations into the case are still ongoing. Now, he also said that police will pass recommendations to the Attorney General's chambers to have an inquest into the case.
Dan dalam proses inquest ni, semua keterangan akan didedahkan di mahkamah. So, saya ingin meminta kerjasama daripada mereka-mereka ni supaya tidak lagi mengeluarkan kata-kata liar tentang insiden yang berlaku, supaya benda ni dapat dilaksanakan dengan cara yang lebih adil ketika benda ni dibicarakan dalam inquest di mahkamah kelab.
He was commenting on statements by Penang Deputy Chief Minister 2 P. Ramasamy and lawyer P. Uttayakumar, which casted doubts over the conduct of the police force. Ramasamy had accused the police of repeating old narratives when issuing statements over the incident, while Uttayakumar claimed families of the victims were demanding answers as to why none of the gunshots were aimed at the legs and all were aimed at their chest and face. Moving on, a man made a gruesome discovery when he went to visit his elderly friend at his home in Kelantan. He found his friend's body lifeless and decomposing at around 8:30 p.m. in Kampung Bukit Marak, Kota Baru. It was 2 weeks since Ahmad Shukri Shafi'i last saw his friend. He often visited his elderly friend who lived alone in the house when he had the time. When Ahmad decided to visit him last night, he was greeted by a foul smell.
Dapat saya bau busuk tu. Saya buka pintu, dah bulak tu. Biru dah mayat dia.
He immediately informed villagers and contacted the police. Kota Baru District Police Chief ACP Abdul Rahim Daud said an investigation is still underway while the victim's body was sent to Hospital Raja Perempuan Zainab II in Kota Baru for post-mortem. Now on to Datuk Sri Najib Razak's One Malaysia Development Berhad 1MDB corruption trial. The High Court was told that the former Prime Minister had agreed to 1MDB applying for a 3 billion ringgit loan from the Social Security Organisation, SOCSO, to lend to Petro Saudi International Limited, or PSI.
Former 1MDB CEO Datuk Syarul Azral Ibrahim Halmi, who again took the witness stand today, testified that Datuk Sri Najib gave the green light to 1MDB, lending $750 million to PSI, which was subjected to the state investment company getting the 3 billion loan from SOCSO. This was in reference to the minutes meeting with the chairman of the Board of Advisors dated March 30th, 2011. Datuk Syarul Azral also said in the minutes the former Premier had also agreed to focus on the Mayborn Hotel Group projects, SRC International Sendirian Berhad, and Kuala Lumpur International Financial District, now known as the Tun Razak Exchange or TRX. He also confirmed that Datuk Sri Najib did not discuss these matters with him. Instead, minutes of the meeting were prepared by the fugitive financier, Low Tek Jo, also known as Joe Low. Datuk Sri Najib faces 4 counts of using his position to obtain 2.3 billion ringgit in 1MDB funds and 21 counts of money laundering involving the same amount between February 2011 and December 2014.
Now, the Armed Forces Fund Board's LTAT position assessment for the financial years ended December 31st, 2017 and 2018 has unearthed various financial irregularities and weaknesses. Its chairman, Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Zahidi Zainuddin, in a statement today said the assessment by the accounting firm Ernst & Young found that prior to 2019, the board had accumulated an investment portfolio with substantial risks and asset quality issues. He also said amongst key findings were retained earnings was impacted due to overpayment of dividend and overstatement of LTAT's assets between 2015 and 2017. There were also certain past transactions that contained potential irregularities and weaknesses in operational, accounting, and legal areas. Other weaknesses which took place under the previous leadership also include the financial and technical due diligence exercises were not properly undertaken by LTAT. The assessment also found some issues with unsold property assets worth 45 million ringgit related to 88 condominium units that remained unsold as at December 2018, despite having been completed in 2015. Other key findings include heightened risk of over-reliance and liquidity issues since 2014, as well as outstanding dividend from subsidiaries that were not paid in full and are still outstanding up to this date. Next, the current international system is such that nothing could be done to compel Indonesia to deal with its forest fires, which affect the region every now and then. Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad said the world can blame or criticize Indonesia, but they will continue to have their fires.
You can blame Indonesia, you can criticize them, say nasty things about them, but if they continue to have their fires, as you know, the new president of Brazil believes in burning the forests for more agriculture. Nobody has stopped him yet. So I think the system doesn't allow us to interfere in the internal affairs of countries.
The Premier was fielding questions at the World Leaders Forum at Columbia University as part of his visit to New York for the United Nations General Assembly. He was asked whether stronger actions such as economic sanctions or leveraging the international community to speak up against Indonesia would help address the haze problem. Dr. Mahathir pointed out Malaysia had offered to help Indonesia put out the fire in Sumatra, Kalimantan, but the offer was not taken up. Rain brought relief to Malaysia after being choked by haze originated from fires in Indonesia in the past few weeks. Now, health authorities are closely monitoring the prescription of antibiotics to combat their misuse, which could contribute to antimicrobial resistance, AMR. With an AMR level of about 30%, which is similar to other countries, Health Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad warned of the danger should the percentage go higher. He said antimicrobial resistance could cause the re-emergence of communicable diseases, and this was a very serious threat.
Tidak semua jangkitan adalah bakterial. Pertama-tamanya kena dikenal pasti, ya. Sebab tu kita dalam amalan perubatan dia ada 5R. 5, ya. Pertama, untuk mengenal pasti penyakit yang betul, ya. Dan pertamanya do the right penyakit condition, keduanya do the right patient, then the right drugs. Kalau viral tidak boleh kita rawat dengan antibiotik. Begitu juga yang lain, dia can be antifungal, antiprotozoal, bukan saja antibiotics, ya.
He was speaking to reporters after launching the National Antimicrobial Guideline 2019, which should be used as main reference in treating communicable diseases in the country. The O'Neill Review on AMR had estimated antimicrobial resistance might kill 10 million people annually by 2050 if there was no early effective intervention. The report also said AMR can result in economic loss with an estimated value of $100 trillion yearly. Now, the paper on the proposal to remove tolls will be presented to the Cabinet next week. Works Minister Barubian said a study by an independent consultant appointed by the ministry had been completed and is ready for review before any decision is made. According to the minister, the results of the study were submitted to his ministry recently. He described the report as complete and fair, taking into consideration all the relevant parties, including its impact on the government, consumers, as well as concessionaires.
Saya percaya ini akan dibentangkan dalam minggu yang akan datang ini. So kita tunggu keputusan akan dibuatkan sekiranya ini dibentangkan dalam kabinet yang tarikh 2nd of October.
The proposal, which was supposed to be presented to the Cabinet last month, had to be postponed to enable more improvements to be made. The minister was speaking to the media after opening a road project at the Pengerang Integrated Petroleum Complex, PIPC, in Johor. Also present was Menteri Besar Datuk Dr. Sahruddin Jamal. The construction of the new 23.8-kilometre-long 4-lane road commenced in June 2016 at a cost of 1.139 billion ringgit. When we return, Indonesia mourns after earthquake. Stay tuned for the details. We're back with foreign news. 4 people died after a strong earthquake struck Indonesia's Maluku Islands Thursday, destroying homes and triggering landslides that buried at least one of the victims. Now, the strong 6.5 magnitude earthquake hit off the remote islands in eastern Indonesia, but no tsunami warning was issued. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the quake struck about 37 kilometers offshore northeast of Ambon in Maluku province at 8:46 a.m. local time today at a depth of 29 kilometers. Terrified people ran into the streets as buildings fell in around them, while images showed wrecked homes with collapsed walls and rubble strewn on the ground. According to Indonesia's National Disaster Mitigation Agency, 2 people were killed by falling debris. Another died after being buried in a landslide, while a woman was killed after falling off her motorbike, fleeing to higher ground. People in Ambon, a city of about 400,000 people, were seen helping injured residents with blood-stained clothes. The Southeast Asian archipelago is one of the most disaster-prone nations on Earth. It experiences frequent seismic and volcanic activity due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates collide. In August, 5 people died and several were injured after a powerful undersea earthquake rocked Indonesia's heavily populated Java Island. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson faced an angry backlash on Thursday over his quip about a murdered MP during a raucous parliamentary debate on Brexit. Johnson went on the offensive when MPs returned to work Wednesday following a Supreme Court ruling calling the Chamber's suspension in the run-up to Brexit unlawful.
Johnson refused to apologise and repeatedly slammed Parliament for passing a surrender act requiring him to seek a Brexit delay past the October 31st deadline if he fails to reach an exit agreement with the EU. But the real uproar came when Johnson said the best way to honour Joe Cox, a Labour MP who was fatally shot and stabbed by a man shouting "Britain first" during the 2016 EU referendum campaign.
The Capitulation Act or the Surrender Act or whatever you want to call it, it does, I'm sorry, but it greatly enfeebles this government's ability to negotiate. But what I will say is that the best way to honour the memory of Joe Cox and indeed the best way to bring this country together would be, I think, to get Brexit done.
Johnson was due to meet Thursday with his party's policymakers as he plots strategy over the crisis with just a month to go before Britain is due to leave the EU. Meanwhile, House of Commons Speaker John Bercow claimed conduct in the House was at its worst in his 22 years of service as Speaker of the Commons, following Boris Johnson's use of language in the chamber on Wednesday evening.
There was an atmosphere in the chamber worse than any I've known in my 22 years in the House. On both sides, passions were inflamed, angry words were uttered, the culture was toxic.
The Prime Minister received huge criticism after claiming late Joe Cox's legacy would be upheld by delivering on the Brexit referendum results.
Now let's hop on to our daily segment Clickbait, where we take a look at what's trending and making the rounds in the cyber world today. Fraudsters are getting pretty smart with how they trick people as they constantly come up with new scams, which is exactly why we need to be extra vigilant. Now, recently, a local man shared on Facebook about how he got scammed and lost 9,000 ringgit within just 6 minutes. His post garnered over 14,000 shares in just 2 days. Here's the story. Jin Wai Chun shared on Facebook yesterday that he saw an advertisement for the sale of a Huawei P30 Pro smartphone at just 2,800 ringgit. He contacted the seller, known as Felix, and both agreed to meet on Tuesday. Little did he know that he's about to be scammed by the man in his late 20s to early 30s, and despite a number of red flags, Jin still fell into the trap. Felix first told Jin that he would need to go to his office to get the Huawei phone and ask the buyer for his credit card so he could process the payment, as his boss does not allow outsiders into his office, as he is selling the device using a staff discount. Jin initially refused, but eventually relented after Felix left him his credit card and a bag with an iPhone XS still in its original seal that the scammer claimed was for another customer. A short while later, Felix called Jin, claiming that the credit card transaction did not go through, and asked Jin for his PIN number to settle the payment. Jin, feeling reassured with the guarantee that Felix left him, didn't think much of it and gave Felix his PIN. Suddenly, Jin received a notification from his bank stating that 1,500 ringgit was withdrawn from his credit card at the ATM. Realizing what had happened, Jin immediately called the bank to block his card, but the process took too long, and within that 6 grueling minutes, he lost a total of 9,000 ringgit in 6 transactions before his credit card was finally blocked. For those wondering about the sealed iPhone package that the scammer had left with him, it was filled with nothing more than just nails and a metal door hinge holder. Don't easily believe in any offers that are too good to be true. Coming up, no tax incentives for non-progressing companies. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. Companies which have been granted tax incentives in the past but have failed to perform will no longer be given the same treatment if they continue to operate the same way in the future. International Trade and Industry Deputy Minister Ong Kian Ming said that this had been agreed to by the Tax Reform Committee, TRC.
We agree that if, let's say, any company that has been approved for incentives in the past and they're still doing more or less the same thing in the same way moving ahead, that they should not be able to continue to renew these incentives in perpetuity. But if, let's say, they bring about higher technology products, higher technology processes, new capital investment, then I think these kinds of areas would be should be encouraged.
However, he added that the government cannot withdraw the incentives that have been given, but will fine-tune incentives policies going forward. He was met at the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers Industry 4.0 Conference 2019 earlier today. Yesterday, senior economist Professor K.S. Jomo said Malaysia has been offering tax incentives since the 1950s, and some companies have been manipulating their accounts to enjoy continuous tax incentives. Bursa Malaysia ended the day higher on the back of positive sentiment surrounding the global market. This is due to easing tensions between the U.S. and China. The benchmark FBM-KLCI rose 3.42 points to 1,593. Now on to stocks to watch. Yinson Holdings Berhad is expected to win 2 new contracts based on its 15% internal rate of return and 8% discounting rate. This, although its second quarter 2020 results are deemed to be below expectations given its delay in the commencement of the floating production storage and offloading Abigail Joseph. Nonetheless, Yinson will continue its progressive management, strong project execution, and contract winning potentials. Next, Kim Lum Corporation is cutting its net profit forecasts for financial years 2019, 2020 and 2021 by 4%, 11% and 21% respectively. However, it's eyeing largely building jobs for affordable housing projects and basic infrastructure works for township projects. Last but not least, DRB Highcom reiterated that Proton's plans to locally assemble the X70 in its Tanjung Malim plant remains on track with an initial local content of at least 30%. The group plans to progressively increase the local content to 70 to 80% by 2023. This will result in lower costs and mitigate forex fluctuations in the manufacturing of the X70 in the long run, leading to better profitability margins for the famed SUV.